Greetings, my name is Christopher Ricker, New York City Park environmental educator here in the Greenbelt. And welcome to High Rock Park, where today we will be participating in our virtual ecosystems hike. But before we get started, I have a few questions for you at home. My first question for you all at home is, have any of you ever been to a park here on Staten Island? Great, that's awesome. What was the name of the park that you visited? Very cool, very cool. Yeah, there's a lot of different parks with a lot of different names here on Staten Island. And each of these parks have different features. When we pan around here and we explore some of the features that we see here, we might notice that there's some things that are missing from this park. Do you see anything that is missing from this park that maybe you notice when you visit a park near your house, near your school, within walking distance from your community? That's correct. There are some things missing from this park that maybe we see when we visit other parks closer to our house. So what did we see that wasn't here? Well, there was no slides, there were no monkey bars, no playgrounds, no ball fields, and those are some things that we might find in some other parks here on Staten Island, but not here at High Rock Park. And why is that? Well, High Rock Park is designated as a forever wild park, meaning that it's protected for the natural areas and wildlife that call this park home. We can come out and recreate and access the park through hiking trails, and also explore and enjoy all of the vast wonder that this natural space has to offer us. And as we go out on our hike today, or if you go on your hike with your friends and family, remember that we have to take responsibility for this park, because parks are public lands and they belong to all of us. As I just mentioned, High Rock Park is public lands, just like all parks here on Staten Island. But different parks are designated by different agencies. Have any of you ever seen a logo or signage at a parking lot or trailhead? Well, if you saw this leaf logo here, that means that you were in a New York City park, just like we are here at High Rock today. Great job with those first few questions, and don't worry, our ecosystems hike will begin soon. But before we go on our hike, we need to understand the goal and learning objectives of our hike. In order to do that, we need to cover 3 specific vocabulary words. No, don't run away from your screen. We're definitely having some fun, and although this isn't traditional school, nature is our classroom. So let's begin with our first vocabulary word. Our first vocabulary word is ecosystem. Do any of you at home know what an ecosystem is? Nice, yes, it definitely includes animals and plants. So the definition that we're going to use today for ecosystem is that an ecosystem is a biological community of interacting living creatures. In science, we call living creatures organisms, and the interaction they have with their environment. So again, ecosystem is a community of animals and plants living together in a specific environment. Our second vocabulary word today is habitat. Do any of you know what a habitat is? Excellent. Yes, habitat includes a lot of different things, like your room at home, your house, your refrigerator. When we think about the word habitat in nature, the definition we're going to use is that a habitat is a place where living creatures, organisms like we said before, make their home. A habitat meets all the needs and conditions for these living things to survive. Some of you before gave some examples of what a habitat is. So quickly, we'll go over what are things that all living creatures need to survive within a habitat. I heard someone mention food before. Water is included, shelter, and space. Now that we have learned how to define ecosystems, habitats, and we discussed what an organism is, let us use that knowledge on our hike. Wow, thanks for waiting up for me. That was a quick start to our hike. One of the reasons I love hiking in High Rock Park is that no matter what time of year you come to visit our park, there's different things to see. Here at High Rock Park, we're in what's known as a deciduous forest. What does it mean to be in a deciduous forest? Well, if you pan up today, you'll notice that there's something different about our canopy than maybe you're used to seeing during the spring and summer months. That's right. All the leaves that are supposed to be up in our trees are currently down on our forest floor. And so when we are in a forest where the trees lose all of its leaves during the winter months, again, that's called a deciduous forest. But just because this is a deciduous forest doesn't mean that we don't have other types of trees and other species of plants. So something I noticed down here as we were hiking was that there's this green little leaves with a white vein coming down the middle of those leaves. And this is known as striped wintergreen. This usually appears during late fall and into the winter. This small herb is also an evergreen. What's an evergreen? Well, if a deciduous forest is a forest full of trees that lose their leaves in the winter, something that's evergreen, that's right, it stays green year round. So right over here on the floor is a very small pine tree. We also call these conifers. So unlike a deciduous tree, this little tree here is going to stay green and keep its needles year round. As we hike along today, we can look around and see the different shape of the trees, the different type of bark. Some of the bark is smooth, some of it's full of little grooves, and even some of the deciduous trees that drop their leaves are retaining a couple of those leaves as well. What's really exciting is that you can go out and explore the forest floor, find all different shapes, sizes, colors. And there's always something new to find and explore here in High Rock Park. As mentioned before, water is an essential part of habitat. All living organisms need it to survive. Here in High Rock Park, water takes on different forms and different shapes. This estuary is coming down from Lake Orback, which we saw earlier, and leading all the way downhill until it feeds into Loosestrife Swamp. During our hike today, we're going to move through a lot of different habitats. This particular habitat is Loosestrife Swamp. As we look around, we're going to see that all components of habitat are here. We have water, which some animals will use to drink, while others might use as shelter. We have plants that are growing inside this wetland, and it's those plants and trees growing within this water body that tells us this is a swamp. Throughout the year, the plants will provide food for birds and insects, as well as shelter and places of protection for things like insects, frogs, turtles, and snakes. And of course, us humans get to come out here and explore it whether with our binoculars, our eyes, or other senses. But again, as we look around, we notice that food, water, shelter, and open space is all available for the wildlife that call this habitat, the swamp, home. As we discussed before, an ecosystem is different living organisms within a community interacting with each other. And here we have some of those organisms also interacting with each other. Have you ever wondered what happens when a tree falls in the forest? Well, over time that tree is broken down by other members of its biological community. We call those members the FBI. No, not like the government agency. FBI stands for fungus, bacteria, and insects. So over a long period of time, these shelf mushrooms here are going to help to decompose this tree so that eventually it will turn back into a substrate on the forest floor that feeds other members of this biological community. So habitat takes all different kinds of forms. Sometimes habitat includes places where animals can live under the water. Sometimes they live up in the trees. Sometimes on mountaintops. And sometimes underneath logs. One of my favorite pastimes is to gently roll a log to see what might be living under it. And oh my goodness, look at that right there. So I'm just gonna take a little leaf and see if we can just scoot this little salamander onto that leaf. Very cool. So this is a redback salamander, one of the more common salamanders found here on Staten Island. It is said that there's a redback salamander for every square foot of habitat. That would mean we're surrounded by thousands and thousands of salamanders. Salamanders are amphibians, and these particular salamanders like to live under logs in this moist substrate. Under here there might be fungus, there might be little invertebrates for the salamander to eat, as well as space for them to reproduce and create more salamanders. I'm gently just going to roll the roof back on this habitat so that I returned it to the way it was before I came here. Another wetland habitat we find here in High Rock Park are vernal ponds, sometimes called vernal pools. And unlike our swamps, lakes, and ponds, vernal pools are seasonal bodies of water. And what that means is that certain times of year, these water bodies dry out. And that provides unique habitat for certain organisms living in our forested ecosystem. Imagine if this water body dried out, what living creatures that usually like water wouldn't be able to survive here? That's right, fish. Fish need water year-round to live. So by this water body drying out and not having fish, it creates habitat, both food, shelter, water, and space for other organisms to call this spot home. What other organisms might like this pond in the absence of fish? That's right, frogs and salamanders. By having a pond without fish in it, salamanders and frogs can lay their eggs without the risk of fish acting as predators to those eggs, ensuring a larger survival rate of their young. Again, that's providing all the essential needs to create a vibrant habitat for a certain organism. While exploring High Rock Park, Sometimes you're going to encounter wildlife and other living organisms within this ecosystem. Trees are plentiful and they can't run away when you walk at them. But then how do we learn what other animals might be living within this ecosystem? Sometimes you don't see them, sometimes you see signs of them. Over here we're going to briefly talk about some deer signs. Down here on this tree, you can see that all of this has been scruffed up and kind of shredded up a little bit. It's a darker color because this is an older rub, and these are what's known as buck rubs. So male deer grow antlers on their heads. Those antlers also have something on it known as velvet, which is a soft velvety material, and they'll come over and they'll rub their antlers against these trees to remove some of the velvet from those antlers. In doing so, they're also marking territory and leaving their scent for other male deer to know where they are and what they're doing. If you come down this way, you see that on these other saplings, there's some fresher buck rubs on here. So you can see there's no black or dark shredded stuff. So here, again, the antler is being rubbed against here, leaving this mark on the tree. Sometimes saplings are killed due to these buck rubs, and sometimes they continue to grow where a sort of scar tissue will grow over, protecting the interior of that tree. What do you think High Rock Park looked like 10,000 years ago? Well, we can explore what it looked like by doing this. All of you at home, close your eyes. What do you see? It's totally dark, right? So 10,000 years ago, we would have been about a mile underneath ice. Whoa, that's a lot of ice. From that time, 10,000 years ago, when the Wisconsin Glacier began to recede, it left evidence of its passing. And here at High Rock, we can see these large glacial erratics, which were left here by that receding glacier. It also was the inspiration for the name behind our park. We hope that you enjoyed today's virtual ecosystems hike at High Rock Park. And please remember that New York City parks are public parks open year-round, and you're welcome to come visit with your friends and family as long as the sun is up in the sky during daylight hours. Visiting New York City parks and joining us for these virtual educational programs assist caring visitors like you to learn about the important habitats that New York City parks protect. Again, by learning about these living environments, we're able to continue to manage, research, study, and discover all the wonderful things that our parks have to offer. If you're interested in learning more about the Greenbelt and our virtual programs, please visit us at sigreenbelt.org. We'll see you on the trail.